So I want to do a video about legendary adventures in Daphne, since we have this little promo going on where if you open up a legendary adventures remains, or sorry, a legendary adventure in a adventures remains, you'll get a free legendary adventures remains. So it's a way to pretty much get twice as many legendaries. It's a pretty cool bonus that some of you might take advantage of if you have extra adventures remains or you're trying to buy some extra remains. But there are 6 legendary characters in the game that you can get from the legendary adventures remains. So there is Kathrine, Lanavel, Adam, Alice, Gerwolf, Deborah. Obviously, there are other legendaries in the game that are like limited time, but these are the main 6 that you have a lot more opportunities to get. So I think, an event that focuses on them is pretty good. And they're going to be the focus of this video here. But of those 6, there's 2 that I definitely recommend against developing. I'm going to tell you why. But let's go. Let's see. Let's just go to the training room here. And let's just pull up a character. And let's just go look at inherits. So a couple of them have really good inherits that make it really hard to recommend actually developing them. All right, so the first one I recommend against developing is Adam. The reason I recommend against, one reason is his Wisdom of True skills. So this eliminates dampening damage, dampening of damage types from the user at disadvantage against, with a chance to reduce the damage when attacked. So that this second part's the key one. It says this is affected by luck, but it's kind of like a way of the night skill. Damage reduction amount rate reduced if limits other than Adam. It's not just stuff you're weak against. It seems to be pretty broad base of damage. So this skill is super good. It says it adds some MP up too, but that's pretty minor. That's not the main reason you do this is because it has a chance to reduce damage. Kind of like it also stacks with skills like Way of the Night and the Sanctuary Blessing that you get from Trade Waterway. So this is a good skill that you want to level up, that you want to teach to everyone on your team, but also ideally you want to level it up on everybody on your team. Like this is a skill that if you could teach it to level 6 on everybody on your team, if you get to level 6, it would totally be worth it. And of course, if you wanted to get to level 6 on everybody, you would need 72 copies of Adam. That is a lot of Adam dupes. 72, that's a lot. You'll probably never see that unless you're like welling hard. But if you play this game for like a year or 2, you might eventually get there. But this is just such a good skill. The other reason you don't want to invest in Adam is that he is a light mage. Mages are OP in this game, but light element is the worst element to be of a character. Like the end game, the current post game, there's lots of dark type enemies that cast cast all these like AE dark spells, and light type characters just get wrecked by them. Adam being an elf mage is kind of squishy, and he'll just take extra damage from every spell the enemies throw at him. Having a type advantage against enemies isn't as important because you can teach light spells to pretty much any of your characters. And some of the bosses that are throwing the dark magic aren't even weak to light attacks anyway, so it's not even that much of an advantage. It's just mostly purely a disadvantage to be light type. So he kind of sucks in the end game compared to like another legendary mage we're going to talk about later. There's also just some other, I think, non-legendary mages you should consider over Adam as well. So yeah, Adam, definitely pass on him, but definitely use him for inheritance. His inherit is super good. Like every Adam, I could never have too many Adams. So the next one I recommend against developing is Deborah. Similar reasons. Her passive is pretty good. This is defeating an enemy restores SP to self. So level 1, you teach somebody, level 1 is 2 SP. Level 2 is 3 SP. Like the first 2 levels only take 1 Deborah dupe. The third one will take it to 4 SP, but it takes 2 Deborah dupes to go to the 3rd level. So you start getting diminishing returns, but like doing 1 or 2 levels on like any of your frontliners can make a huge difference in having enough SP to like just get through dungeons, and just gives you a lot more staying power in the dungeons. This could be a useful skill to teach to like your backliners, maybe like 1 level on a mage or something. Mages don't have a lot of skills, but they do have mental unity. And like if you're trying to go through a tough dungeon or something, or maybe something, there's like a game mode called the Old Castle Ruins. It's not active right now, but it is pretty much an endurance match. Like if you go to the Old Castle Ruins, you pretty much have to have all the resources on you, because there's you have to go through a bunch of floors to get through it. And if you taught your mages the SP recovery to all your characters, like your mages have more ability to do mental unity to get through that. Also, sometimes it's also good to teach mages the self-healing skill as well. Self-healing, this is another one I teach mages because this is skills with divine power. So it's a good one to, for mages to use to self-heal or priests to use for self-heal. They don't use it a lot, but once you start, like I said, once I was doing the castle runs, my mages were running out of SP, and I didn't have any recovery, so it might be worth putting a level of Deborah into your mages as well. But your frontliners definitely want as many Deborahs as you can get, at least till you can max skill at level 6 any of your fighter types. So yeah, Deborah, another one that's good for inherits that you just want to be able to, get that high as you can on as many characters you can. And Deborah as a character, her main class is a thief. Her secondary class is a knight. Her second class that you can change to is a knight, which are those are kind of like the two worst classes in the game right now. Thief's the worst class in the game, followed by knight. If you want a knight, there's just other options for it. You're not missing out too much if you don't develop Deborah. And I think she's much more useful as an inherit. So I'd say those are the two characters I would definitely recommend against developing. So Adam and Deborah, don't develop them. Use them for inherits. Their inherits are amazing. Do it that way. The next character we're going to talk about, this one does not have a particularly great inherit, but he is actually worth developing, and that is Gerwolf. His Eruption Strike's actually a really strong ability, but only on himself. If you teach it for someone else, it's pretty meh, because it only does half the damage, but on himself, it is one of the most powerful attacks in the game. It's absolutely worth using if you are using Gerwolf. Kind of like the reason a lot of people don't like to use him, though, is that he is evil aligned. He's also a dwarf, so that could be, so he is a bit on the slower side, but speed doesn't matter that much in the late game. The actual speed's not that relevant of a stat, so a fighter with 7 speed isn't that relevant in the long run. He has high strength, and high dexterity, which matter. His luck's a bit low. That's the one that probably hurts him more than the speed. The speed, easy to make up action speed with gear later on. But yeah, Gerwolf's fine, but he is evil aligned, which can limit you for some teams. If he does not play nice with Lanavel, if you want to use Lanavel, you can't use Gerwolf. So Gerwolf or Lanavel are kind of mutually exclusive the way they kind of work. But a Gerwolf is pretty good if you want to use ninjas, characters like Kiriha, because all ninjas are evil. And you could also pair him with somebody I can't look at her, but Milana, she has a passive that gives evil aligned characters either in front or behind her a damage bonus. So instead of getting damage bonus from Lanavel, you could put Milana directly behind him and give him a damage bonus that way. So Gerwolf's actually pretty good. Gerwolf is probably the best fighter in the game. Yeah, and Gerwolf's second class is priest. So he can get healing spells, but also if you make him a fighter again, he'll get that nice priest weapon bonus to add to his attack, which just makes his eruption strikes that much more powerful. So Gerwolf, probably the best fighter in the game. Actually very worth developing if you're doing an evil team. And then obviously the next character we obviously have to talk about after Gerwolf is Lanavel, who you pretty much never see in the same team as Gerwolf. You're either using Gerwolf or you're using Lanavel. Lanavel's passive increases damage to enemies for everyone in the user's row if that row is only good or neutral allies. So if you have Gerwolf in the same row as Lanavel, this passive becomes completely inactive, so you can't use them together. Well, you could use them together, but you want to get the bonus, and generally it's just kind of considered to be the main reason to use Lanavel is to get that extra 10% damage. Yeah, Lanavel's base class is a knight. Her second class is fighter. As a fighter, she does better as a fighter than a knight. And in the early game, she's probably the absolute best character for the early game, for the beginning Abyss. Probably the best character in the game. She does have, her inheritable skill is heal after combat heal. It does Queen of Love and War. So this one restores minor HP to all allies upon winning a battle. Cover mouse reduce learn based on other. So this ability is complete trash on anybody not named Lanavel. It does, the healing is so weak. And even on Lanavel, it's kind of meh in the later game. It's probably, if you want to level it up, don't do it past level 3. At level 3, it heals 34 at the end of combat for all allies, which is okay. But to go to the next level, you need 2 more dupes of Lanavel. It's 1 dupe for level 2, level 3. And then to beyond that, it's 2 for the next 2, and then 3. I mean, it just starts to get too expensive. And you'll just be better off disciplining her But in the early game, though, that healing can matter a lot. When you don't have a lot of resources, you're just learning the game. And, that heal after combat pretty much, is almost will be like, a huge chunk of your life. I mean, at the end game, when everyone has 600 HP, 34 health hit points is not a lot. It starts at 12 at level 1, but even at, like, when you're at the beginning game, 12 health is actually a lot. So it's one of those passives, like, it's okay to inherit on her, kind of. The only downside is that it's an ability that does absolutely nothing for you in combat, so it is not my favorite skill. And it's a terrible one to inherit on anybody else. Like, the healing is so much weaker on anybody else that it's not worth it teaching to other people. So there's that. But if you just want to fight her, she's fine. But she is fire type, which does hold her back a lot in the second act. In the second act, it's water themed, and most enemies are water type. Like 90% of enemies in the second act are water typed, and she will take extra damage from pretty much everything in the second act, and you'll hear her screaming a lot about how she doesn't want to die every time she splashes a bit of water. So, and she will die a lot. She will die a lot in the second act if you're using her, so you do have to get through that. In the third act, you really do want to have fighter in the third act because the fighter skills are just better. But she is perfectly fine to use. But if you're not using her, she is a dismiss for tags candidate because her inherit is terrible. So there's just nothing you can really say about her inherit that's that's worth teaching somebody else. It's just a bad inherit. So yeah, and that leaves us with two other characters, and these are probably the most two popular characters in the game. So let's talk about Kathrine,
if you have time,
the mage.
How about a chat?
So unlike Adam, Kathrine is pretty much a must pick for most teams. She is an earth mage, which might be the best type of mage, except maybe dark. As an earth mage, she is pretty much like the opposite of Lanavel in that she is strong versus water type enemies. So in the second act, she will absolutely destroy us. She'll take less damage for everything, but also her earth spells will do extra damage to everything. She also gets water spells as a secondary type, which are not as useful, but earth is super good in the second act. But she also has bonus damage versus undead. Like, she gets Advice of the Skull, increases damage to undead and decreases damage from undead. So this makes her, she has a natural undead slayer on all of her spells, which makes her like invaluable versus undead. And there is so many undead, like the first act and the third act. The third act is so much undead. Like Kathrine is so good in both the second and third act. Second act because of earth type, third act because of this ability. It's just such a good ability. Makes her top tier. She's a human mage. Like, her other passive that is inheritable, it's an okay one. It's Eye of Kalshalm. So this one continuously increases detect with a chance to nullify an enemy's ambush. So this can protect you from ambushes, which is something this is a skill that will save your life. Ambushes can game over you really quickly, especially if you get ambushed by a particularly nasty group of enemies. There are definitely enemies in this game that will game over you pretty quickly if you get ambushed, and this has a chance to prevent that ambush. The higher level of the skill, the better the chances of working, but also the higher level of Kathrine versus the monsters. Against like low level monsters, this works very frequently. Against higher level ones, like especially if they're higher level in Kathrine, this won't be as reliable. But if you level this up, it starts to get better. Though I would not worry about leveling this up until you max discipline. Kathrine, disciplining her is more valuable than inherits. And this inherit, if you for whatever reason you aren't using Kathrine, this inherit is fine to do on the main character. You can put this on main character to get this ambush ability. Also increases detect, so it might be worth teaching to your thief if you're using a thief. I just use your Kathrine for chest, but detect is good for your thieves, so it does raise detect too. So that is also a good ability that way. But yeah, your Kathrine just super good. But yeah, don't use. I would recommend if you're using her, don't worry about leveling up her skill until you max her discipline. She gets extra MP from discipline. Plus, she gets bind tolerance, which is always good on your mage because you don't want your spellcaster being skill bound or spellbound. Also, her second class is priest, so she become a priest mage or a bishop, which is super good. As a bishop, she's a lot more tanky. Or as a priest, she's more tanky. She also gets all access to all the priest abilities, including Way of the Priest. And one other thing to note is she has the secret art of Laralik. If she's in the middle of the back row, she can cast this spell even as a priest. Normally, Laralek is mage exclusive, but she can cast this as a priest if she's in the center of the back. She can only do it once per combat, but a lot of times that's all you need. A lot of times you just need to cast it once per combat, so there it is an option that way too. But yeah, last but not least, it's obviously going to be Alice, who I don't actually have my line right now because she's out on dispatches. We've been working on Asha, but Alice, arguably the best character in the game. Between her and Kathrine, the best characters, but Alice is worth using, but her inherit is also super good. So let's go to a train. We need to talk about... We don't even need to do that. We can just look at the skills, because I have it on all my other characters. So if we look at her skill here, of Blessing of Agora, adds 1 consecutive turn to buffs and debuffs applied by the user. MP increase amount and growth amount of consecutive turns reduced to learn by someone other than Alice. So pretty much for anybody not named Alice, you pretty much just want exactly 1 level, because 1 level adds the extra turn. To get a second extra turn, you'd have to level it all up to, I think, level 4 or 5, which takes a lot of Alice dupes. 1 Alice dupe gets you the extra turn. And it takes you a lot more Alice dupes to get that second extra turn, so not really worth it to go past level 1 on anybody not named Alice. On Alice, it's worth maxing it out if you can, but you can also get minor bit of MP, like get super minor, like not worth it for the MP. You'd mostly just want the extra turn for your buffs and debuffs. And that's worth teaching on anybody that casts spells. So if you have 3 mages in your team, you want all of them to learn it. You obviously want your main character to learn it at some point. It can even be useful on like fighters and stuff if you use like the Warrior's Battle Cry. This one also benefits from like the Blessing of Agora because it's a buff. So yeah, there's a lot of things you can, like I said, so it's actually a pretty decent one to teach everybody exactly once. But Alice as a character is also just super worth using for second class mage. So like your Kathrine, she can become a priest mage, and yeah, she's probably better as a mage long term. And like Kathrine, she does have a passive that she can use in the center back row, and it's a Secret Art of Badios. It's a AE version of Badios. She's the only character in the game who actually can learn that spell right now. So it's like an AE version of this spell, and she can cast it from the center back row. And it doesn't really matter if Alice is a priest or a mage for that spell ability, because it's either way, it's once per combat, and there's nobody that learns that ability naturally. So Alice is just better as a mage, because then she has an AE light spell. Badios is light damage, so she has AE light spells, but she would also have La Migal, which is an AE water spell she gets. So by virtue of being a priest mage with a special ability, she gets an AE light spell and an AE water spell, which just makes her really versatile. Spell wise though, she also gets some fire spells, but so her spell, like I said, she's not as cool. It would be cool if she's a different element, but it's still a pretty good kit. And yeah, it's hard to argue with people listing Alice as number 1. You know, some people say Kathrine is number 1, but both of them are totally worth using. And Alice's inherits, you probably want to use a few inherits from Alice to teach that Blessing of Agora to your characters. Anyway, not too much more to talk about on this one. It's fairly interesting that 4 of these legendaries have priest as one of their 2 classes. So there's lots of legendaries who could become a priest. But if you're interested in priests who aren't legendaries, I did a video recently about the best non-legendary priests, which you can find down below. As always, thank you for watching.